G'day folks, talk to Joe Williams, a proud Wiradjuri man that runs The Enemy Within, suicide prevention and wellbeing education, talking about what he's gone through with his own trauma and his career in the NRL with the South Sydney Rabbitohs, which led on to professional boxing and what he's currently doing now, running these awesome workshops around the country and even tapping in the overseas. Because suicide is in every community. And it's okay to talk about it. It's important to speak up. Men, women, everybody. You're doing solid work out there, brother, in the community. And if you like the podcast, hit that subscribe button. Be much appreciated. And we've also got a Patreon page. So if you want to become a part of the squad, be a patron, check out the link below. That'd be great. And want to thank our sponsors, Permanbuild Australia, the greatest electrical chairs in the land. Wouldn't be sitting in anything else but these four wheels right here. And they got great assistive tech also. So righto, let's get into it. Righto, Joe Williams, thanks for jumping on, brother, and having a yarn on the Keep Rolling with Jake Briggs podcast.
Pleasure, brother. It's always good to connect with different people, different mob from around the place. I'm someone who I'm a big believer in connection, whatever it may be, whether it's through Zoom calls as we're doing these days or over the phone, whatever it is. But I'm a big believer in connecting with people.
Yeah, mate. And talking about mob, so where's your mob from?
I'm a Wiradjuri Waggaloo man. So
Yep.
I was born in Cowra and raised in Wagga, and then travelled all around the place with football and so forth. But my dad is a Wiradjuri and Waggaloo man as well. So from a little place called Brungle, which is near Tumut, which was one of the Aboriginal missions early days, and he grew up over there, which is corroboree frog country down that way at the base of the mountains. And then my mum's family is from a little place called Orange, which is out in the Central West, which is a nice and cold place as well, which is not too far from me. I'm in Dubbo these days, which is on Wiradjuri country still. But mate, always, no matter where I have been around the world, I never go too far from Wiradjuri country, mate. Always near home.
Mate, and it's a massive mob. You're Wiradjuri mob out there, out west. Like I can see, like if you can see just behind me head where it's that dark brown there, like that's a massive like spot within the Australian continent, mate. So, and you should be very proud of it. It's just one of many mobs on this continent. And
I always say that we're the biggest nation in the country, but we're also the best looking, best dancers, best whatever you want to call it.
I settle down.
I get a laugh with that every time I go into different communities. All the with all the old ones, they always give to me, "Hey, get out of here! Don't go saying that here."
Yeah, 100%. And how have you been going, just in general, like with yourself and your family? Like COVID's hit everybody pretty hard and fast, and the current climate that we're in now, when you got the Delta strain and it's just been ripping through the nation like wildfire, and you can see the numbers increase. And so, like, I know you're out Dubbo, and it's more on the east, like on the coastline, East Coast Sydney and the surrounds. But how is it affecting you generally, brother?
And it's what my calendar. Like I'm someone who's I'm on the road, 300 plus days in a year in different communities around the country, and that's just all shut down now. Obviously last year was a bit of a write-off as well, so I didn't get to do anything on the road. We started to get going again, earlier this year, but slowly starting to get some stuff going. But then, all these sort of things happen again, and the calendar that had some things, people starting to get some confidence to get out into different communities now, and then all these different strains hit again now. So we're back to square one. But there's a reason for everything. I took last year, 2020, as a time to do a stack load of inner work.
Right.
I'm a big believer in we are the way we are because of different things that we've learnt, been conditioned to.
Do you mean sort of looking back on within yourself and home
Looking in
base?
me, mate, looking in
Yeah.
me and starting to doing loads of work around developmental trauma and even different things that we learn and who we are and why we are, right? We all, as adults now, are all products of conditioning in the early years of our life. They say the first 1,000 days of our life, you know. We are products of that conditioning now. Why we act the way we do is all due to attachment or non-attachment and things like that. So I took a lot of last year into doing a lot of work on myself, and you know, that works like the onion. You know, you peel off one layer and then there's another layer there to do the work again. So I didn't stay dormant in what I was doing. You know, a lot of people did different things in how they did it, but for me, it was about that inner work, getting to understand a lot about who I am and why I am.
100%. Keep grinding, eh? And talking about who you are. So when you're talking about the enemy within and suicide prevention, wellbeing education, so what were those building blocks before the organization, before the light bulb went off and it's like, I'm going to jump in with enemy within and spread this throughout the nation? But before all that, like, who is Joe? Joe Williams, thanks for coming down on the Keep Rolling with Jake Briggs podcast and just having a yarn about the important work you're doing through the nation and just who you are, brother. So really appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. It's always good to connect with different mob right throughout the place. You know, whether it's I'm a big believer in connection. You know, connecting obviously face to face would have been a great deal better, but we're confronted with challenging times at the moment, mate. So you know, connection, however we do it with technology these days and different ways that we can connect on phones, whether it be in person, however we do it. It's just about connecting with people, mate, having conversations.
That's it. So where's your mob from?
I'm a Wiradjuri Wellbeing man. So Wiradjuri being out, you know, the big nation in New South Wales. And Wellbeing is a tiny little nation at the base of the mountains. You know, over near it's so small that you can't even see it on that map behind you. You know, it's over near a little place called Tumut, so in between Ngunnawal and Wiradjuri, and Ngambri, all that sort of area. But you know, it's a tiny little place near Tumut. My old man was brought up in our family was one of the original families back in a place called Brungle, which was one of the Aboriginal missions in early settlement days. So yeah, I'm over that way, and my mum's mob's from Orange, so we're Wiradjuri way, but we all sort of grew up. I grew up in Cowra with my sisters and brother. And
That's just north of Cowra, yeah, Orange, not too far away.
More, I think more, yeah, northwest maybe, heading out towards Dubbo-ish way. You know, sort of out that way, Orange, Bathurst, all those sort of areas, you know.
And that's where you are today, yeah, out Dubbo. Yeah,
I'm in Dubbo, yeah. So, mate, the boss is a Dubbo girl, and she goes wherever I go, wherever she says to go. You know, I'm not silly in that regard. She's the boss. She makes the calls, and I just turn up where I got to.
Yeah, staying strong on those Wiradjuri ties, that's for sure. And as said before, that brown area on the map there, one of the biggest mobs in the nation, like the old Wiradjuri mob. So there's a fair few of yous, like, you know, on country and around Australia, that's for sure.
I always stir different communities wherever I go, mate, about everyone. We're the biggest nation because everyone wants to be like us. Everyone wants to come in there and hang out with us. So I always say we're the biggest nation. We're also the best looking, best dancers, and best whichever one you want to call it. So
settle down.
Causes some laughs and some G's in the crowd, mate, when I get that one.
Nah, you got to jam up, eh? So COVID, it's hit everybody hard, real hard, like throughout the nation, like throughout the world. But just with yourself and with work and everything else going on, and now you got this bloody Delta strain that's ripping through the East Coast like a wildfire, and especially through Sydney and spreading out. And just how has that affected yourself, brother, and general life?
It's been a challenge for me. It's been a challenge for me, as in business wise, completely, to the fore as far as what I do. So a lot of what I do is out in community. So, communities aren't confident with people coming in now, and I get that 100%. I get it. 2020 was sort of, I was stuck at home all year, and then this year they were starting to get some confidence out there to start doing some work around the place again. But it's now we're sort of in the grip of it once more. So, I took last year and this year as well a real opportunity to do some work on myself. I talk about doing the work all the time, doing the inner work and starting to understand who we are as people. And last year I went deep into, having some conversations, but also understanding why I am the way I am.
And that's always good, reflecting on yourself. Like, it's always good to, go 100 miles steaming ahead doing what you're doing, but just having that self-reflection and seeing where you are. And, because there's always room for improvement for everyone. Yeah. Hey?
Well, there is, but also, second to that is that whilst there's room for improvement, we're going to understand why we are the way we are as well. And what a lot of people don't understand is that we're all a product of the first 1,000 days of our lives, they say, and a lot of why we are is because we've been seen and conditioned and learnt everything the way we are now. So, it's important we get triggered about different things. We behave different ways. We speak in different ways. We react in different ways. We're going to understand why. When you understand why, that's when you can start to, make some adjustments if it's not quite right. So it's important to be able to do that work.
Yeah, very much so. And talking about the hows and the whys and the whos and talking about who's, like who you are. And just before you had that light bulb moment with Enemy Within to start that organization, and just the building blocks of that, like the foundation of who you are, like where and who is Joe Williams before that all started out with Enemy Within?
I was a sports player. I was someone who never ever thought that I'd end up doing what I'm doing now. We talk about paths in life, and I had a path of being a rugby league player, and then I had a path of being a boxer. And I think my life's purpose. They say the two most important days of your life are the day you're born, then the day you find out why you're born. I think the day you find out why you're born, you find out your life's purpose. And my purpose, I was put onto this path to help other people. It's a path that's still continuing. It's a path that I'm still learning and growing on as an individual. But for a long time, I was a sports person, and a sports person who struggled behind the closed doors with suicidal ideation. I had done for a lot of years. And there was,
So you had that as a young fella, yeah? Like going,
since I was about the age of 13.
Yeah, right.
The first time I can recall that. A dialogue inside my head that talked to me and told me that I was no good, that I was worthless, that I don't deserve to be alive, and carried that all my life throughout my footy career, throughout my boxing career, everything. And it wasn't until, I unfortunately, I was taken to the path of a suicide attempt and tried with the power of my two hands to not be sitting here talking to you today. And something bigger than me kept me here. It's now, again, it was in those moments I found out why I was born, and that put me on the trajectory or the path of helping other people. The more I started to talk to other people and normalize what it is that we go through internally, help people to understand what it is we go through internally, do we start to get some real paths to wellness. And it's about, understanding that and helping others to achieve that. And helping others to achieve that is what helps me the most.
And with the normalization of that, because it's always, because you see the stigma with it, and it's hard with men, whether it's Aboriginal First Nations people, Torres Strait Islanders, or people in general. And, when you're going through like a pressure cooker system of professional sports and the NRL. So what was it feeling like when you were within that system and feeling that way? Was it just a bit of shame, or just bit at that point of your life, like not being able to
I
speak
thought
out,
that,
or
yeah, I thought that everyone went through it.
Mm.
I thought that everyone had this inside their head. And then when you start to do some work on it and you start to understand, and many, many years after, like, not everyone has these thoughts in their head every day whilst they're just trying to get up and have a good day. So it was about once I identified what it was, and it took me a long time to identify that. Don't worry. Like, it was down the path of alcohol and drug addiction, which I got clean from. And now, thankfully, to be 16 years sober, and
good on you.
many years also from clean from drugs as well. But I realised that I was band-aiding what was going on in my head through substance. Then I got clean. I took the substance away, and the noise got turned up, and I was like, "Wow, I've got to really deal with this." And then boxing helped me to deal with that too, because boxing wasn't just about punching other people in the face. Boxing for me was about working on myself internally. It was about me, working hard to the bell. It was about me, not giving up. So it's been a journey. It really has. But then it took me to the grips of a suicide attempt. So, and then psych facility stays, and mental health wards and everything like that. So it's all about learning, and this path that we have. Unfortunately, can have some really, really tough and struggling times. But it's in those tough times, I believe, that we're going to get closer to what's going on. Instead of running away from it and trying to band-aid it, we're going to get a little bit closer to it and start to find out why we are the way we are.
And that's it. You've got that lived experience where you've gone through that and come very close when you're talking about an attempted suicide attempt, and that could have, that stuff can go either way. And but
as I mentioned, super lucky and super thankful that I'm still here. If I had it my way in those times, I wouldn't be here. But obviously, there's something out there that's bigger than me that controls that stuff. That kept me here. So I've got a second chance now. I've got to take every step and make every post a winner.
Yeah, 100%. And going back to, before we jump into Enemy Within, and going back to professional sports and just the Aboriginality and what it comes with putting on a Rabbitohs jersey, just talk us through that process and just pulling on that jersey and what that felt to run out on the field and represent that team.
I think going back, and I can't remember much about my actual first grade debut, because I taught the conversation that I speak about now is about head trauma and concussions and so forth as well, and the impacts that has on our mental health. But and when we look at my first grade debut, I had a concussion in the first 10 minutes of the game. So I don't remember a great deal of the game. I've never even seen it again, the game on tape or anything.
And back then, you probably would have played that whole game with
played the whole game. Yeah, I wasn't out cold, but I was stung, and I don't remember the game. So, I do remember that day, and everything that could have went wrong went wrong. I took the wrong turn to go to Shark Park, which took me onto the M5, which I was caught in peak hour traffic, which made me late. I got to the game when the team was going in from the warm-up. You're supposed to be in the game before 2 hours before, so you can warm up with the team and all that. Mate, I got to the game when the team was finishing the warm-up. So it took me the first 10 minutes to bloody warm up onto the field, but jumper presentation and my LBM, presented my jersey to me and all that sort of stuff. It was special times, but yeah, everything that could have went wrong that day. I got a knock in the head, we got beat, and it wasn't a great day. But mate, the next weekend we actually beat the Storm, which for South was big back then because we didn't have a lot of wins.
Yeah. But the main thing is you're getting in and having a crack. So, you put a few years in, but mate, you retired pretty early. So when you're talking about, the retirement, like with footy and whatnot, so was it just looking at, hey, I want a different challenge and throw on the boxing gloves and just see where that can take me? Because did you have a little bit of a taste of it before, like whilst you're playing league, and just thought this is going to be my new path now and see where this takes me? Or
What it was, I'd been someone who grew up in boxing gyms because the old man was an amateur boxer, and if there was Friday night fights and Friday night footy, I watched the fights 10 times out of 10. I was a kid that always loved boxing. To this day, I love boxing. But it was when I finally walked away from rugby league. I'd had enough. Blatantly honest. Like I'd lost all interest in the game, and it was the only thing I had in common with my teammates was playing footy and going out and partying. Now, I was also on that path of sobriety, so I wasn't going out and partying anymore.
Yeah.
And I just lost interest in everything that I was doing. And I started doing some work in the off season with Johnny Lewis, the great boxing trainer.
Yep.
And I started moving around a little bit and hit the bag. And the more I hit the bag, the more I realised it was doing good for me, like mentally and emotionally. Like I was obviously working fairly hard and as a boxer, and I was having a few spars and so forth. And he said, "Mate, do you want to have a fight? You hold your hands up all right. Do you want to have a go at it?"
Right.
Well, might as well. But for me, like when I first went to boxing, people sort of half laughed at me because I wasn't a real aggressive footy player. And even as a boxer, I wasn't an aggressive fighter. Like I love the art form of boxing, of hit and not get hit. So I didn't fit particularly the boxing.
Like that stereotype mold sort of thing. Yeah.
I was a very placid sort of person, and for what I thought was boxers, but the more boxing gyms you go into and the more you interact with boxers, you realise that boxers are some of the most humble people that you could ever meet. Even the outlandish and the ones who are outspoken, they too are super humble when you get them by themselves.
Yeah, you'll see them turn it on when they have to, and because that's going to be pumping up the fight and whatever else. And obviously, if it's high level and you got pay-per-views and everything involved. But yeah, I agree with you there, 100%. And what's like, because you've been in both camps there when you're looking at boxing and league, like team sports to individualize. So how did it feel with the difference between like the physical nature of it, how the intensity of it, and mentally, like where that would sort of put you in your place and how you dealt with it?
I'll give you an indication. I played footy at 82 kilo. And I boxed at 63.
Really?
Right. So,
mate, you dropped some
20 kilos. 20 kilos difference, right? And that's just through hard work and obviously not lifting weights and stuff anymore when you're boxing. And so when you're boxing, you're doing different types of training. You're doing running long kilometers on the road and things like that. So you had to transform the body. So pretty much I went from 82 kilo in my last rugby league game to 69 kilo for my first fight. Jeez. And then I ended up fighting it. I fought my second fight at 66, and then the majority of my fights then 63. I even made 61 kilo once. It nearly bloody killed me making that weight. But just a different type of training, different, so the comparison of what your attitude's going to be like as a boxer compared to, eating as much as you can to be big and bulky as a footy player, to hardly eating anything as a boxer.
And how was that mental aspect for you? What grind that it takes when you're going into weight cutting, when you're depriving yourself of water, especially if you're leading up to weigh-ins and you got to really make that weight. Obviously, they can, if the other fighter doesn't want to have a go, then they can, cut the fight altogether. So how, like mentally, do you think that put you, what stratosphere did that push you towards, mate, when you were?
I think those type of weight cuts and those type of times in my boxing career, I wrote about it in my book. How in between each fight, whether you lose a fight and you got to go and work on things for the next 2 or 3 months till you have another fight, and you got to work on it every day. and you've got that little voice in your head telling you you're not good enough, and you've got that little voice in your head telling you to work harder, and questioning why you got beat, and and then the discipline of not having a bottle of soft drink in comparison to having chips, so it's that mental discipline that I needed as a boxer. They're the things I wrote about in my book as far as building the resilience to help me mentally and emotionally now. So I learned that in those moments that you just got to stay present in what you're doing, and don't think long term, just think now.
Yeah, and thinking about now, so you jump through the ropes, like building up nerves. Like, what's the nerves leading up to compared to jumping into a ring compared to hitting the footy field? Like, because
footy,
you still
footy,
get
mate,
different.
In footy, you've done it since you're a kid.
Yeah.
In footy, you strap your boots on like you do every other weekend. Boxing, you're preparing for 2 to 3 months for one fight, and you're working hard every single day, 2 times a day, with a plan to execute. And if you don't execute that plan, then you could be hit and knocked out in an instant. So it's the mental capacity around that again, which I say that boxing was one of the things that changed my life and helped me to fight back mentally and emotionally, because it taught me how to be mentally strong. As I said, you can just flick your boots on and go, I could put my boots on now, overweight and old, and go and play a game of footy now, right? Yeah. Not at a hugely high level, but I could go and play 80 minutes, no worries. I wouldn't be able to get through 2 rounds now as a boxer.
It's totally different, the cardio, yeah?
The cardio, the mental ability, everything. Your mind starts to tell yourself that you don't want to be in there, but then that pride makes you grit down on your mouth guard to think that you can be in there. So they're 2 different sports, and as I said, I've played both significant parts of my journey.
Mate, I've seen some of the belts there. I've seen them in some of the pics from social media and whatnot. Seen a few boats, a few belts floating around. So, what was it? WBA, or what associations were they with?
I was lucky enough to win WBF, the World Boxing Foundation. I won a few different titles with them. I won the world title with them twice as well, and the WBC Asia title as well. So the WBF is probably one of the smaller, a lot smaller sanctioning bodies, but at the end of the day, it's not about the belts for me or the prestige of it. It's the fact that I got myself out of bed every single morning during some really, really tough times, to get out there and continue to put one foot after another when I didn't want to, and they are rewards, and I think for me, recognition that I could do it, and they're a constant reminder that when I'm having a tough time, I look at those things and say, you know what, those aren't for me anymore. They're for my kids to be proud of. That I can, have on the wall and they can be proud of, and I can see as a testament to some times that I've got through that are extremely tough.
100%, all the hard work. Enemy within. What does that mean to you?
It's exactly what it is, right? You look at rugby league. I come up against and played against some fantastic players on the rugby league field, and then I come up against some guys in the boxing ring that wanted to punch my head off. But I can honestly say that nothing ever compares to the enemy of fight inside my head every single day. And a lot of people will resonate with that, because mentally some things can be really challenging. So, the name of the enemy within, exactly what it is. It's the enemy within our own mind, and it's about not overcoming, but learning to manage it, learning to walk side by side with it, hand in hand some days, and say, you know what, we don't need to fight against each other. We can walk together.
Well said. Yeah, especially when it's about hand in hand, just knowing how to manage. It's hard to overcome, but if you can, manage it and move forward, that's the main thing. And, growing up in community and seeing across the landscape with Aboriginal communities that are going through the struggle, and you're looking at what you've gone through with your own struggles, and you were pretty young, brother, when you're talking about 13. So have you seen, or what did you see, like when you're leading up to what you wanted to do within community and with enemy within? What could you see within community that made you want to get out and yarn to people?
I just saw the struggle. I just saw the struggle. It was one of those things that when I first started speaking about it, I think it normalized that someone who's got some profile in a smaller community, um, if he goes through it, I can go through it as well. So it normalized the conversation, and then we know about the horrific rates that we have, challenging rates in our community. So
That's right.
it's about going out and helping give a voice to the silenced. In a lot of times, and it's about helping them through tough times.
Suicide, like, it's a delicate topic when it comes to, First Nations mob or Australians in general, and whether that's a person that's going through it, leading up to it, or whether that's the person from the outside trying to understand. And like myself, like, I've known people over the years that have carried through with the act, and and it's been hard, and for myself trying to understand it. And especially when you're looking at someone that, when you're just looking at a picture and they look happy and it's a happy family, and then the next minute they're gone, and it's trying to understand what that person's going through, but you never know what's going on behind closed doors, or I should say behind closed minds, when that person's got that internal struggle. They might look like, everything's working out for the person, for them on the outside, but internally there's that struggle. And then the next thing you know, they're gone. And it's, as an outsider, me trying to look out and saying, how could have I helped, or what could have I done? And it's hard for a lot of people that, just trying to understand suicide in general.
I think it's a tough thing to understand.
Mm.
Like even people who go through it, we don't understand it. We don't understand why. We know logically that everything we need to do is to reach out to people. Everything we need to do is to exercise. Everything we need to do is to, talk to people who can understand or can get us help. But the mind doesn't let us do it. So it's like, a real disconnect between who we actually are at times. And then you can imagine that the repercussions then it has, or the flow-on effect it has to the people around us. We're super disconnected. We're disconnected from ourselves. We're going to be even more disconnected from the community and our family. So a lot of what I tell people is to try not to understand it. What we need to do is just to look at behaviors of people, and just don't ignore any little sign. If someone's acting differently or acting odd or not acting like themselves, let's jump on that, and ask them, what's up? Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do? What can I do to help? There's the tough but important questions that we need to ask each other.
Yeah, 100%. And when you're looking at this, the subheadings of enemy within, when you're talking about suicide prevention and wellbeing education. So when you're looking at preventative measures and topping up wellbeing and education, what's the first steps when you're going into preventative measures and looking at that? Because it's hard for some people to, whether that's a person that's going through it or whether that's an outsider that's knows someone that's going through the struggle. So what's baseline where you can jump into that from either side of the fence?
Yeah, I think just keeping people safe. Just keep people safe, and isolation is the first key, But again, like, isolation may not be a sign of danger for some people, because I'm someone who isolates all the time. I pull myself away from people because I'm very much an introvert naturally, but have to be an extrovert because of the work I do. Right. So I like to be alone, but the people around me, the people close to me, recognize with me when I'm not well. They ask me, is everything okay? They ask me when I'm everyone's starting to tread on eggshells around the house and I'm kicking stones everywhere.
Right.
They ask me. You got to have the important questions, because at the end of the day, like, sometimes we don't get to ask the questions, and then we kick ourselves because we didn't. right? We
100%.
just need to pay attention to behaviours and make sure that we're helping each other.
That's right. And talking about paying attention to behaviours, mate. So when you're looking at urban, rural, and remote, because suicide, it doesn't matter where you are on the globe, but reactions are different, and the way that people operate are different when you're looking at urban, rural, remote. But what do you see with differences when you're going into different communities?
And I speak from a range of communities, from communities who are very well off, financially, and then there's communities that struggle to fight for a feed every night. So there's many aspects to what I see on the ground, but there's one common theme of hurt, and what it comes from, and the underlying factors of what it is. We look at, what's happening with us mentally and emotionally, and what's happening with us mentally and emotionally now is a reflection from something that we've been through. So what we have to do is have a look at some of the things that we go through, and we have to be very mindful of the behaviours that we speak in front of young people, the behaviours and actions that we do in front of young people. Because, again, as adults, we're all a reflection of things that we've seen and been conditioned to in the early years of our lives.
Conditioning. So when you're looking at intergenerational trauma, like to do with a lot of mob around the country, so do you think that takes a lot of effect in how a lot of mob, feel and think, and when it's got to do with what mob have gone through and how emotions are being handed down through the generations?
Yeah, I think what we're going to have a look at. There's obviously genetic traits and features that do that, but the one common thing that's handed down throughout the generations is our behaviours. Right now, it's the littlest of things, the way that we raise our voice, the way that the normalised behaviours of kids getting a beer for dad out of the fridge. Those sort of normalised behaviours are the things that we need to to start to have a look at as adults in who we are now, because no one is exempt from different challenges that we have. And when we're looking at the things that have been handed down generationally, generational struggle has been handed down to us, and it's very much the implications or the reflections of that, or even the symptoms of that, things like alcohol abuse and violence, and some of the different behaviours that we speak in communities. Behaviour is language, so we're going to have a look at what's the language we're speaking in our communities, because how we act and model to our kids is exactly how they're going to act and model to their kids. We're going to draw a line in the sand and not do it anymore.
100%. It's setting the tone, and like you said, it's getting that language throughout. And it's not always easy when you're looking like with a lot of mob that are on country, and then whether it's pretty isolated and people are like, oh, why don't you just move away and just go to an urban setting or whatnot. And it's a lot of people aren't like that. They want to stay on country. It's who they are, where they belong. And a lot of people don't get that, like in my
they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. I think I talk a lot about what is mental health to our communities, and mental health isn't particularly what's going on in our mind for our communities. It's a lot of who we are spiritually as people as well, and where we live, and the impact of how we live can be a huge factor in that. So I always talk about a conversation I had with an elder out this way, a great man, Uncle Paul Gordon. And he said to me one evening, sitting around the fire with him, he said, "You're not mentally ill. I'll challenge what anyone says to you. I don't think you're mentally ill." And I was like, "What do you mean by this? This is something I've been told for 10 years." He said, "You're not mentally ill, you're spiritually ill. When you heal your spirit, that's when you get well." And it clicked, and he said, you can't heal your spirit inside four walls.
That would have felt powerful, eh?
You got to get out on country, and you got to sit around fires, you got to listen to old people, and you got to learn the stories, right? Because what people don't understand is that all of our old stories, all of our dreaming stories right throughout the country, no matter where you are, all of our dreaming stories had lessons of well-being.
100%.
Helping each other, looking after each other, respecting the land, sharing with each other. the answer to getting well for our country, no matter who you are, black, blue, green, I don't care, is in our stories. All of those values and all of those lessons in all of our stories is about helping each other get well.
That's it. Helping each other, whether that's physically, mentally, for yourself or the mob and the community, which is very important. And the thing is, and I'll get sick of this and just the overrepresentation of mob in jail and just the system not really taken on board, like the mental health, the disability, the intergenerational trauma with mob that are in jail. When, I've known some mob where they've been 10 years locked up, indefinite detention, without a charge, on remand. And it's the system really not taking note of this person, of the mental health and the disability or other factors that come in. And where there needs to be more systems put in place, because you look at the suicide rates that do drive people when they're locked up, whether they're inside, right? Whether that takes place, or you've got mob that have been locked up for 10 years, institutionalized, come out, don't know how to deal with life, and where they end up going down the suicide route.
It's like they're still chained in the mind. And it's about trying to help people, not only to help the individual understand, but help the wider community understand the impacts of that. I would argue that a huge percentage of people that are incarcerated are in there for trauma-related illnesses, like trauma-related incidents as well. Like we get in there and there's a lot of the times alcohol and violence involved. Alcohol is a reflection of trauma. Violence is a reflection of trauma. Again, don't look at what the behavior is, look at why the behavior is. When we start to understand the why, that's when we're going to start to get some ground with people.
Yeah, and you're not seeing a lot of, good rehabilitation processes. There are a lot of good ones on the outside, but I'm talking about when it's the whole transitional period. If you're looking at mob that are in jail, they're not getting the right means.
I don't care what anyone says, but in jail is not a rehabilitation centre.
100%.
No way. They're putting people who are mentally, spiritually, and traumatically ill into a place that's just going to exacerbate the behaviours. Right? What we need to do is stop locking people up and start finding out why they're having their behaviours, start to understand and address the behaviours. Right? Because all we're doing is we put someone in prison for 20 years, they go in there for trauma-related behavioural incidents. That trauma is still there after 20 years. If you haven't done the work on it, you come out, you go back to exactly the same behaviours.
And like you said, it exacerbates, it adds fuel, it keeps pushing that. If you don't end up getting rehabilitation processes in place, it's just systemic cycles with recidivism, and it's just going to be ongoing. And when we're looking at rehabilitation, but what I want to jump into, so we're looking at where rehabilitation processes aren't in place, and we're talking about jails and just talking about the impact that can have. And so I hope the wider community can realize to some degree, have a bit of empathy, because we're looking at the nation now being locked up.
That's the thing. Like you look at people are really uncomfortable with these lockdowns. I start to question why we're uncomfortable. Is it because we don't like being locked down? Is it because we don't like being controlled? Is it because we don't like sitting in the silence of our own head? Now think of people who are incarcerated.
22 hours a day, locked up in a concrete cell, no bigger than a toilet cubicle, and then let out for 2 hours in the yard to get a little bit of vitamin D, maybe,
Like we're going to have a look at, different, that system's not working. If we've got the recidivism of people it's a revolving door, then it's not working. Because we should be rehabilitating people so they don't want to go back into prison. And as it sits, the stats will probably show you that it's not the case.
That's right, and we're seeing this all in real time where people are getting fed up. I'm just talking about lockdown, whether that's people in jails or it's different, but with people that are obviously free out into society, but people not feeling free at the moment because obviously with the lockdowns. But you're seeing this spread out with social media and where people are elevating that platform through different mediums, or where these protests now are rolling out onto the streets. So you can feel and see the frustrations of it all. So
Yeah, that's something it is. It's, obviously with with people, spilling out on the streets, the inconsistencies of what they're seeing and hearing on TV, the different inconsistencies with health advices and so forth as well. People are frustrated. I think people are frustrated as a reflection of not being able to work and being locked in their own doors, and which is also keeping us trapped in our own heads.
that's right. And mate, talking about people feeling trapped. So we're going over to, because I looked into a bit of your work that you done when you went over to the States, and I just wanted to touch on like the Indian mobs over in the States. And, you went over there and protest and doing some important work, but is there a lot of similarities between Indian Americans and mob over
The
here?
Native American mob over there are identical to us. We talk about being family. We talk about being a native family across the world because they have the same challenges in communities, from the same trauma, and the same dispossession of land, culture, and theft of all the principles that we live by. So a lot of even a lot of our cultural practices, a lot of our belief systems are very similar. I've sat down with elders right across the country in the US and told the same stories as out here. So a lot of our systems are very, very similar. It's just a different part of the globe. And, a lot of our challenges are the same challenges, high incarceration rates, drug and alcohol challenges.
That's right.
Abuse in communities. Like it's identical. My whole train of thought changed when I did the keynote at the World Indigenous Suicide Prevention Conference, and out of that conference, sort of realised that the conversations around the room was that people weren't dying from mental health. People were dying from colonisation and the trauma that's been impacted in taking away the way that we've lived for thousands and thousands of years.
See, there's that intergenerational trauma. Spot on. So you're doing a lot of great work within the community. You obviously have been, and where you're talking about going back to where COVID's hit, which has been a shame. So you're not getting out doing a lot of the good stuff that you're doing. So with a lot of the workshops that you do and have presented, so can people still access them in a different format, say like this, whether it's through Zoom or different mediums?
Yeah, what we've been doing, we've obviously, we looked at doing things differently, and the world went virtual last year. So, we've done sessions in schools and organizations and corporates and everyone where it's just Zoom sessions, and we've done one-on-one sessions. We've done lots of different things. So it's just about looking at how we do things differently, and getting the same aspect of how we do it, but just doing it differently. We're lucky enough to get impacted. We're connecting with many different communities right across the world with what we do. Not just in Australia as well. So it's been, whilst it's been challenging, it's been, technology has been a good thing for us as well.
That's awesome. So it's even broadened it out to other communities in other parts of the globe. That's solid, brother. So enemy within. So with goals going forward. So what's it looking like from 2021 moving forward, mate? And some of the things that you want to establish now. Now the world's gone turned upside down. We're working in different mediums like this through Zoom, and you're doing some workshops that are reaching other people on other parts of the globe. So what are you going to be doing moving forward, and what are some of the goals?
Yeah, what we're doing is we're looking at do things differently again. Like we've developed a three-month program to help with individuals and communities. So what we're doing is working on different things that we can do to help young people with their behaviours and look at some trauma recovery stuff. So we come up with what we call the TRIC program, Trauma Recovery, Identity and Connection, which is all about helping young people to identify the behaviours that they have and then readdress those behaviours. And then work to move them back into school full time and back into family full time, and working a lot with the youth justice and out of home care systems and those sort of systems as well. So it's exciting time for us, and once we did a pilot of this program initially and it went really, really well. So we're going to start to broaden it out a little bit and then hopefully get funded to go across some other communities.
Good on you. Solid, Bella. So if people want to get in contact with you, whether it's, email through the business with that enemy within social media, whatever it may be, throw it out in the atmosphere, brother.
So my website is www.joewilliams.com.au. My Instagram and Twitter handles are at @JoeWilliams_T for Tom, E for Egg, W for Williams, JoeWilliams_TEW. And my Facebook page is The Enemy Within, Suicide Prevention, Education, and Wellbeing Education.
Well said. Well, hey, I hope, even with all the lockdowns and whatnot, I hope it just opens right up on this platform with Zoom, like you said before. And you keep doing the good work in the communities, whether it's you physically there or you doing it in the digital space. So, and I really want to say thanks a lot for jumping on the show and having a yarn with us and spreading the love, brother. And yeah, you keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, brother. And always a pleasure to connect with mob all across the country. And mate, it's been a real pleasure. We've had a couple of different hiccups with the technical difficulties, but mate, it all worked out well, and I'm really glad that we've been able to connect. So thanks very much.
Beautiful, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
All right. See you, folks. It was a solid yarn chat there with Mr. Joe Williams, and just the importance of suicide prevention and wellbeing education and everything that he covered there. Don't hesitate to reach out to him. Awesome resource. He's doing solid work in all communities around the continent and even tapping in overseas. So reach out to the fella. The Enemy Within. Doing solid work, brother. Keep it up. And if you like the podcast, hit that subscribe button. Be much appreciated. And we've got a Patreon page, so if you want to become a part of the squad, hit the link below. That'd be great. And if you want to get in contact with me, you can get me via Instagram at streetrollingcheetah or email, one word, streetrollingcheetah@gmail.com. And we've also got a Facebook page, Keep Rolling with Jake Briggs, so check it out. And want to thank our sponsors, Permanville Australia, the greatest electrical chairs in the land. Wouldn't be sitting in anything else but these four wheels right here. They got great assistive tech also. So righto, see you on the next one.